Hello, this is Dylan Mother on Daily Dose of Dylan, Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Mother on Daily Dose of Dylan. Alright, so got one, as I promised you guys earlier today, I made a second podcast to make up for some lost time over the weekend. So got a few topics I'd like to cover. This is not going to be as long as the last podcast I had, but alright. Let's open up with this. So, if you guys recall last podcast, I talked a lot about my expectations for CJ Stroud. He went 2 for 4 with 13 yards in his win against the Patriots. I do think he's capable of overcoming the horrible organization of the Texans, but I do think it's going to be tough. But Stroud's performance is not really what I took from it. What I took from it was it was yet again another great showing by Bill Belichick. And you could say it's the Texans, but he's still completely shut down CJ Stroud with his backups, by the way, with like his third strings. He was overwhelming CJ Stroud. And again, I know it's the Texans, but historically, Bill Belichick plays really well against young quarterbacks, and I really do worry for CJ Stroud being in the position he's in and the conference he's in. And that's why I think if any of the 3 or 4 first-round quarterbacks that are drafted would bust, it would be him, CJ Stroud, because he's in Ohio State and Alabama. Like, the reason they don't produce high-end quarterbacks is because they pretty much hand everything to you on a silver platter. You know? So I think if anyone is going to be a bust, it's going to be CJ Stroud. Alright, so first-round receivers, Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith debuted in their preseason. And I was kind of shocked that the Seahawks and Vikings went that direction. Picking receivers, because they were both bad on defense, but they're pretty much, I guess, doubling down on offense, because I guess in that case, if your offense is that unstoppable, you don't need your defense to be that good, because you can just outscore your opponents in a shootout. And it's honestly not the worst strategy. I mean, think about it. New England doesn't draft great receivers, and they're declining. They're slowly getting worse. And most of the teams last year who had receivers going for over 1,000 yards made the playoffs. And, the Vikings and Seahawks, I think, are both teams that are very capable of making the honestly, they can contend for an NFC championship. I think that spot is reserved for the Eagles and Niners, though. But we'll see what happens in that case. Alright, so Brock Purdy obviously had a great year last year. He's feeling almost back to normal. And listen, they were 8-0 when he played a full game last year. The one time they lost, it's when he got hurt in the first quarter. So, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold aren't bringing you to a Super Bowl. I think Brock Purdy is bringing you to a Super Bowl. And Brock Purdy is not Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. But they don't need him to be special like that. I mean, they went to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. So they don't need Purdy to be amazing. But I think he's pretty good. And I think he's more than capable of bringing that Niners roster to a Super Bowl. Alright, so, Aaron Donald believes the Rams have something to prove, and, I mean, they do, after the disaster that was last year. Now, I don't think they're going to be great. I see a 7-8 win team. When I look at them, I don't think they're going to replicate the disaster that was last year, because I believe Stafford's going to be back at full health. And, even Cooper Kupp last year wasn't at full health. And when last time Kupp and Stafford were fully healthy, they won it all. So, I think it's going to depend on health. But even if, I think they're a 7-8 win team. I think their ceiling is 9 wins, so I think they'll be fighting for a wild card spot because of the weak NFC, but I don't see them going much further than the first round. Alright, so Mike McCarthy said he feels like he's back in his element after he was, now that he's the Cowboys play caller. I think there's a lot of positive and negatives with the Cowboys. Pollard coming back can be a great thing or a really bad thing because we're not sure how he's going to play after, breaking his leg. I think Dak Prescott, the more, like I said last podcast, the more you rely on him, the less successful they are. We'll see how they perform. I can see them making the playoffs, but I don't see them getting that far. Very similar to the same opinion I have with the Rams. And their defense isn't very good. Their O-line's declining. They got the Zach Martin holdout. Like I said, a lot of negatives, but there's also a lot of positives at the same time with the Cowboys. So their season is very interesting as usual. All right, so there's a lot of quarterback questions going into this preseason. Obviously, some of the ones I'm interested in. Obviously, Jordan Love, as a Packers fan. I'm very interested in what Jordan Love can do. Obviously, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett. I went over pretty much all the quarterbacks last podcast, but honestly, this segment is mainly about Jordan Love. I mean, I haven't heard that many great things, and I did some research. It seems like even in Rodgers' second year when he was behind Brett Favre, his teammates already knew he was special. So it's concerning when players are saying, oh, we're 50-50, we're not sure if he's the future, when with Aaron Rodgers, they were sure in year 2. He's in year 3. He's actually heading into year 4. Jordan Love is a question mark. If he's good, the Packers will be good. The Packers have a great roster, so they can hold up even if Love is a little disappointing. I think if Love is bad, we're an okay team, maybe 7-10 or something. If he's good, we'll be maybe 9-8, 10-7. And if he's okay, we'll be in that 8-9 range. So I think a lot of the Packers season rides on how well Jordan Love performs. He had a pretty good preseason game yesterday, 7 for 10. He had a touchdown and a 102 passer rating. So he looks promising, but it is preseason, so I can't get too hyped up about that. All right. So Baker Mayfield talked about, I guess, replacing Brady. You can't really replace a guy like that, but he kind of just said, I don't play like him. Now, my problem, and I think a lot of analysts' problem with Baker Mayfield is he had Kevin Stefanski, a great coach. He had a great O-line, probably the best in the league at the time. He had Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, OBJ. He had all these great players. And he kind of blew it in Cleveland. And he doesn't seem to be acknowledging that fact. I just don't think he ever understood how great of an opportunity he had as a first overall pick going to the Browns. And, I mean, he couldn't even get the Browns to like. The Browns are desperate enough to go after Kareem Hunt and Deshaun Watson, who no one likes. So it's kind of hard for me to wrap my arms around a guy who even Cleveland can't convince themselves to, I don't think anyone hates Baker. No one hates Baker because he does things his own way. There's a lot of quarterbacks that do it their own way. Lamar does it his own way. Burrow does it his own way. Rodgers also does it his own way. No one hates them. But I think they hate him because of his lack of self-awareness. How many QBs would have hoped to have the best O-line, a coach like Kevin Stefanski, and a running back group like Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb? It's hard to... I just don't think Baker ever realized how great an opportunity that was. And he just lacked the self-awareness with that. Alright, let's shift to the Jets. Robert Saleh spoke on the offensive line issues. He kind of just said you have to be patient, but as a coach, you want it done really quick. The O-line is very important. As I said last podcasting, the Jets are a 10-win team. But I do think they'll struggle the first few games. Think about it. The O-line is very important. The Rams went from champions to disaster after Andrew Whitworth left. But, the Jets, they have a great defense. They got Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. A lot of things to like about the Jets. But that offensive line is a real question mark. So, we'll see how they do. I think they're a 9-win, 10-win team. Something around there. So, we'll see how that goes. Alright. So, Anthony Richardson played his first game against the Bills yesterday. I think what we saw was... Or no, not yesterday. So he played it today. He struggled a bit. He threw an interception, went 7 for 12 for 67 yards. Yeah, what I saw with him is what I expected to see. He's a big guy. He's kind of like... He reminds me a lot of Big Ben. He's got some Cam Newton. He also has some Josh Allen in him. I don't think he's going to have the best first year, especially with the Colts. But I do think he's going to show some promise, kind of like Josh Allen did. Josh Allen's stat line was pretty bad, but he did show some signs of talent. And I think that's what we're going to get from Anthony Richardson this year, based on what we saw today. Alright, so the Bears offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, is playing Fields. He played Fields today. He said playing him was about the chemistry. Now, you did see an increase in Fields' stats after Luke Getsy became the offensive coordinator. His completion percentage went from 57 to 62. His yards per play increased by 50. His total touchdowns doubled from 11 to 22. And his passer rating went from 71 to 92. So with Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator, Fields is much better. But it's hard to ignore the fact that he's 5-20 in his last 25 starts. That's a hard fact to ignore. Now they won. They won against the Titans. Fields, he went 3 for 3 with 2 touchdowns, which is almost unheard of. But yeah, so Fields, he's got promise. I think at some point you do have to start winning games, though. Especially this year, they did get you some weapons. They improved the O-line. I don't think they have to make the playoffs, but they do have to win more than 5 games, in my opinion, the Bears. Alright, so surprisingly, this next segment is my last, so I know it's a big jump going from a 59-minute podcast to what now is probably going to be a 15 to 20-minute podcast, but that's what we got. So the last segment, so Tyreek Hill believes he can go for 2,000 yards on the season. And while I think he has the talent to do that, that's going to be tough with Jalen Waddle on the other side. When you have another 1,000-yard receiver with you, it's going to be hard to get 2,000 yards by yourself. So, we'll see how they do, but I don't know if he can. No receiver has reached the 2,000-yard mark. Hold on, did Cooper Kupp break Calvin Johnson's record? I gotta check this. But yeah, Tyreek Hill. With another guy like Jalen Waddle on his side of the ball. It's going to be tough. Okay, so Calvin Johnson is in the, obviously, 1,964 yards. Cooper Kupp a close second. Then you got Julio Jones, Jerry Rice, Antonio Brown in 2015. I think a big thing to consider here, though, is that none of these guys had Jalen Waddle or another 1,000-yard receiver on the other side of the ball. Calvin Johnson was pretty much by himself. Cooper Kupp was pretty much the receiving core for the Rams. Julio Jones was the Falcons pretty much. Jerry Rice, only receiver for the Niners. And Antonio Brown. The Steelers didn't really have... they had a deep receiving core, but Brown was the center. And they had some solid receivers. I'm sure the Niners in the 90s with Jerry Rice and the Steelers, they all probably had solid receivers behind Antonio Brown and Jerry Rice, but they didn't have any 1,000-yard receivers. Like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are both 1,000-yard guys, so it's going to be hard for Tyreek Hill himself to break the 2,000-yard mark, And I know that's a huge thing for receivers to do. I'm sure that's every receiver's dream, but it's going to be tough for a guy with... I'm not going to say it. I said it enough times, so... Yeah, Jalen Waddle on that side, on the other side of the ball is going to be tough. All right. So before I overstate my other points, I'm going to sign out for now. Hopefully, see you Monday. We'll see how it works out with work and stuff, but alright, until then, it's Dylan Milano Daily Dose Dylan, Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, or iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Milano Daily Dose Dylan. Have a good one. See you tomorrow.